So we're growing and getting those experiences. We did a commercial that won this award, and the budget of that commercial was X amount. For someone, that's a win, right? So each person has their own different types. For me, it might be, man, we got on the Inc. 5000 list, fastest growing company, ranked number 14 in Oklahoma, which I'm like, that's a national thing. So that was a big deal for us. And we're like, wow.
What is going on, guys? Welcome to Be Frank Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to talk about business development, culture building, and a whole bunch of different stuff. And I hope you guys learn, inspire, be happy. We're gonna invite two special guests, Vahid, owner of Freestyle Creative. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Perfect.
Thank you. First, we had to research what kind of gear do we need for this. We started, simple. What kind of gear do we need? How do we edit this? And then once we got it on there, launched it, we're like, oh, there's no audience for this. It's the first video. I think it was 10 or 12 people listened to it. And that's how many people we have working at the company at the time. It was they probably all just clicked a little bit of it, and that was it. And then we had to okay, well, how do we promote it? Then we started an Instagram page. We started getting it out there and tagging people and getting guests on there that were higher caliber. People knew of them. They already had a following.
Yeah.
And then being in the middle of the pandemic, it was hard. We went to Google Meets. So we did a screen record. Actually, it was a Zoom recording.
Oh, gotcha.
Zoom recording. And it's you get some glitches, you have some delays here and there. And after a while, it became a time issue for a lot of people.
Gotcha.
Oh, we're busy on a shoot. We can't do this. Or oh man, I can't do the interview. Or maybe my business partner can do the interview. Then
right.
I think whenever I stopped going to a couple of them, that's when it slowed down. It became okay, let's rotate this other person. And it kind of needs to be the same person from what I've experienced from that. And then the video element helped a lot. So we stopped doing it for a while because we were busy. We probably went on a 12-month, at least a year, where we weren't filming anything.
Gotcha.
And then we went to that, like I was telling you, last year, or actually it was this year, went to a conference, and I was like, man, I see all these videos people have on their reels, and they're taking little clips. And these are influencers, East Coast, West Coast, a lot of business stuff that I follow.
Yeah.
And they have these 10-second clips.
Yeah.
It's this long interview, but they have 10-second clips. I'm like, man, a long interview is really hard to do, to keep it consistent, keep it going, takes time. And then there's a lot of work to cut out the good pieces for the editor.
Yes.
It's a lot of work there. I'm like, man, let's just make it short. And another challenge we had with the RFP podcast was to start an audience from scratch. Well, I've been very active on social media. I don't have as many followers as you do. But it wasn't starting the RFP, which had we had less than 100 followers. That was really hard to build a brand from the ground up. So what we decided to do is let's do it with the camera. The goal is to get maybe 30-second clips pulled out of this. It won't even be a full podcast. We're not even putting these videos on podcasts. They're not even going to be uploaded to YouTube full.
Yeah.
It's going to be short clips. And the whole point of that is to get me content for my reels. That was the whole goal of it.
Perfect.
So that's how we started.
Yeah.
We're still experimenting.
Yeah.
It's been fun, and we've learned a lot, and we're still evolving it.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It's because you own your marketing agency, I do own a marketing agency, and then it's just starting podcast. It's people think, oh, you guys are doing it professionally.
Yeah.
But it's podcast is different things.
Yes.
So you have to start it from scratch.
Yes.
So it's kind of sometimes it's I look at my video editors and stuff, say, hey, this podcast, just figure it out. But buying this mic, and then we just getting the switcher and all that kind of stuff. It's just a different technology.
It's so different. It's okay, this is a very different process. Oh, another thing I was gonna say is, look, you're also releasing this on your platform, and that was the big shift that we did. Is I'm releasing that on my platform with the audience.
Yeah.
That way, we're not starting from scratch. I'm gonna be the host on that. Every time, I'm not going to pass it around, and it loses momentum and consistency. So that's kind of how we went about doing it. But like I said, we're still figuring it out. We were shooting on, I'm trying to look around what kind of cameras you have, but the cameras we shot on the first couple episodes, I think they had a record limit. So we would actually have to pause.
Oh,
So
yes,
we couldn't
yes.
run it through all the way, even if we wanted to.
We did too.
Because it's a DSLR that stops. It's like a
Yeah.
film camera, not like for long format.
Right.
So actually, we're still shooting on those cameras. So that's why we can't even do a full-on podcast all the way through, because there's a break in there. But you can edit. You can work your way around
Yeah.
it. But the gear wasn't optimized for it. But it looks good. And our team, like your team, is talented. They light it. They have the background. And
Do you guys use AI to edit it?
yes,
Yeah.
they do. They
Yeah.
use AI to edit. And
Right.
I think the AI creates a draft where, depending on who's talking, the camera moves around on that person.
Yeah.
They showed me a video on
Right.
what it does. They actually showed it to me, and they sent me a link of a video. And I love AI. I'm using ChatGPT
Yeah.
on so many things.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was using ChatGPT for this podcast. I had it ask me questions to prep me. So it was actually digging through. I want to get in the mindset. For me, it's like I'm going through a work day and I'm shifting gears to come to a podcast.
Right.
My brain is disorganized. Like, I am in a different world. I'm right now in a different world to come to talk about about what we're going to be talking about on a podcast.
Yeah.
My mind is not there. So as I was driving back, I just was going through ChatGPT and just talking through.
Yeah.
And it was asking me questions. Well, have you thought about talking about this? Just to get me in the mode.
That's
right?
awesome. What did ChatGPT ask you?
It asked me, it's like, okay, talk about, okay, that's fine. Talk about how you lead, the culture that you put together. How do you motivate your staff? How do you keep that going? Talk about some of the experiences you had that were, positive and negative,
Yeah.
and do a lot of experience sharing, storytelling.
Okay,
Those
I
are
would
some of the
love to
things.
go
Really?
dive into that for sure.
Okay,
But
for
also,
sure.
thanks so much for coming. I mean, honestly,
Absolutely.
I don't we both own the agency
Mhm.
and then the same a metro.
Yeah.
But I always look up to you,
Thank
and then
you.
I
Same.
don't see as a competition or anything. It's
Sure.
just hey, you guys have that. Your thing, we have our thing,
Sure,
kind of
yeah.
stuff, and then you always helped me. And then
For sure.
honestly, I wanted to do this for so long, and I wanted to thank you because of that, COVID era.
COVID era.
You say it was hard time, but honestly, I was going through a hard time too. And then
Yes.
remember I called you?
Yes, I do. It's like, oh man, COVID, we're all surviving right now. It is tough.
Yeah, remember that day, I never forget. And then I think that is why I think the reason I can probably afford this mic, and then also having this office and all that kind of stuff is the things you say to me.
Oh, thank you.
Because of that, I don't know if you remember the conversation, but I was saying, hey, I'm having a hard time. A lot of employee doesn't like me. It's a lot of going through, and then hey, if I'm trying to manage people, they, kind of pull back and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what should I do. And then of course, being nice of yourself, you're like, Yosuke, you're doing fantastic. I'm like, dude, can I ask you advice? And then you told me that. Remember you told me?
I actually, because I have two kids, so I don't sleep much.
it's
They were
okay,
young,
it's
but
okay.
tell me when you're telling me, it's coming back to me because it was a couple of years ago. But go ahead.
But when you told me, what you told me was you deserve your employee. You deserve your employees. That's what you told me. And then I was like, man, that kind of hit my heart. But also
I didn't mean it in a bad way, but I'll explain that a little bit.
It wasn't bad way,
Sure.
but you explained how it is, and your mentor told you that
Sure,
and all that kind of stuff.
exactly.
And then I was like, man, and then that shifted my mindset of okay, I'm the one hire the person.
Mhm.
I'm the one training them.
That's right.
I'm the one asking them to do stuff. So if your employee is good or bad, it's just responsibility is me.
Exactly.
I think that shifts my mindset to
I am
how
so glad to hear that.
I treat my employees, treat the culture. I guess culture has a different a vibe here now, but culture is a bad a word now in the industry or whatever.
Sure.
But anyway, so I think that was a very, very that one word, I think that changed the trajectory of my life.
You get the people you do.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you that I'm so thankful you
thank
told me you
you.
pick up the phone, and then it's just I just have the opportunity. I'm done talking about this podcast. I'm just thank
No,
you.
this is so good. I appreciate saying that, and just to give a little more context on that.
Yeah.
So I had a business coach, and I was in the same boat. I get frustrated. It was just so hard, and it's hard to their expectations, your expectations. It's just when you're under pressure, it gets hard. And then he would, how many times he's told me this, you get the employees you deserve. And the first time I heard that, I felt the same. I was like, are you telling me I'm not doing a good job? Like, I'm working so hard. But he always said, but it's true, Vahid, you get the employees you deserve. If you're the one hiring them, you're the one training them, you're the one setting expectations, you're at the hub of that. You're the buck stops with you. You're the hub of the wheel.
Yeah.
You're in control. Like, you need to, just because if something's happening bad, you're not setting the proper expectation, think about it. You get what you deserve.
Yeah.
And that was very hard for me to accept as well. I was like, well, shoot, okay. And I just always focusing on being the best version of myself. How I started off in this industry, being younger, and gosh, I probably started freestyle when I was 22, 23. Just when you're young, you have a lot of energy, and adrenaline, you're excited, you're competitive, you're just like
working 24/7.
Yeah, you're working 24/7, and then you're like, well, everybody else should do this too. But it's like, as I get a little bit older, I'm like, not that I'm softening up. It's just like you're trying to like, okay, not everybody can do work at this level. Let's keep this pace more manageable. And then everybody goes in a different phase. And right now, I have 2 kids, so like, when you have kids, you cannot work like you used to. It is a totally different ball game.
Yeah.
And that for me was a challenging transition in itself, going from no kids to kids. And you want to put your family first. I don't want to be in a point where I'm just working. Nobody wants to, live life either on the, don't be graphic, but at their deathbed, and you're dying. You're like, oh man, no one's gonna say, I wish I worked more hours and worked harder. You want to be with your loved ones, your family, your friends, and I, at one point, I think in my 20s, I always joke with people, 20s were working for working really hard, because my 20s just went by, all I did is work. That was, and I have kids, I was just, feel like 24/7, just working to build the foundation to get to where we're at today.
Yeah.
And, everyone makes mistakes, and I've made mistakes, and are there situations that I could have probably handled, maybe maneuvered differently in my early 20s? Sure.
Yeah.
But as I got a business coach, and I'd say the past 10 years, I felt really good about how I have been handling conflict or challenges, and setting expectations, making sure people clear is kind a lot of times. Like a lot of times I've seen conflict in the work environment, and a lot of it is 2 people are not having a conversation.
Yeah,
and
that's
that conflict,
true.
they're keeping it, and it's building up, and it's stewing, and just getting them to talk. Or even myself, like if someone is doing something, I'm like, man, I don't like how you do that. I might pull them off the side, never have an audience, do it in privacy, and talk through it. Like, hey, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to work through this challenge. Here's the challenges I see. What challenges do you see? I try to open up like, hey, what challenges do you see? So it's not like a one-way feedback, because when it becomes one-way feedback, it kind of can hurt someone's feelings, even if it's a one-on-one.
Yeah.
And I always try to, I think for me, that was a big game changer there, is like, hey, here's some feedback. Do you have anything for me? Like, that way it's like, oh, it's not just a one way. Like, hey, sometimes I'd come in, I'd be a little late. That was my thing. It's like, Vahid's always late. Does he not respect the time? It's not that. It's just, I'm always a time optimist, and I've gotten better. I got here 15 minutes early because what I do now is like, I try to tell myself, I need to be there 15 minutes early. I don't know about traffic.
Yeah.
I can't be optimistic about everything, because maybe, what if I get a flat? Then it's a different situation. But like things that, can come up that you don't plan for. And I was really bad about packing my schedule. There would be no breathing room from one meeting to another.
For sure.
And you're busy, man. We're all busy. We're trying to do as much as we can. We're motivated. We're excited. Yeah, I can slide it in. And even to this day, sometimes I find myself, even though I've gotten better, is giving yourself breathing room to end something and then get in the mode of starting something.
Yeah.
There has to be that wiggle room. So
Well, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like we're having the same issue, or like same kind of stuff as a whole team, because of a lot of, as an advertising agency, creative firm, like they have so many things to do. And then like client calls you last minute, say, hey, I need this now, right? And then like my teams, they're like kind of like, well, we're always busy. They say this and all that kind of stuff. Like, hey, let's figure this out, like we've been figuring this out. Like they're going to ask emergency stuff that's expected. We don't plan that to put it on our task management system for as an emergency. Like let's say put 5 hours for this client, 8 hours of client, or like a week, and then let's schedule out the emergency. So whenever you come the emergency, you don't have to be freaking out. But if you're not,
Right.
then you can just do the next week task, no problem, you know.
Absolutely.
I think that's the things that I have been doing like lately is like, yeah, like try to do like 10 things a day. Like going home is kind of miserable. If I just focus on just like 3 things, and then if I do 5 things, like a good day, you know.
Yes, it's like, oh my gosh, I knocked out 5. But you're so right about that with the fires. Like, give yourself bandwidth and time
Yeah.
to put out the fires, because if you pack your day, now these things that you don't expect pop up.
Yeah.
You don't have the time or the bandwidth or mental capacity because you've packed yourself with so many things. And that's something I'm still to this day, like, I'm like, I could have done a better job spreading things out, because I get in that mode of like, I'm motivated, I want to get things
And
done.
then you say, hey, we'll get done for you today.
Yes,
right?
we'll get
To
done
the
for you. Man, one of the biggest things and this is a very hard, it's easier said than done, is setting expectations from the very beginning with a client.
Yeah.
And sometimes you lose the client because of that, and that's challenging. But as I get older, I have less time in the evenings and weekends. But just like setting the expectation from the front of like, oh, like for example, we're gonna close the office the last week of December.
Okay. Like
And
everybody?
Everybody. We're
Nice.
closed. The last week of December, we're closed. And we started doing that a couple of years ago, and it was hard at first. We had to keep setting expectations with clients. And most people are out of town, honestly. Clients out of town in last week of December. But setting those expectations, planning it from the month before. Hey, our office is going to be closed. In case you need something, we're not really available. It's a very hard conversation to have.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, let's make sure we got all our ducks in a row before then. And even then, we try to set this expectation with them, but we give ourselves enough breathing room to where some of the team is working a little bit remotely, checking emails. We're always checking emails.
Yeah.
But we want to make sure that the client doesn't say, we don't tell the client, hey, we're checking emails, send us emails all the time. Because then they will be you're welcoming them to give you work.
Right,
We're
right.
trying to set the expectation. If something comes through, we'll knock it out too. That way we went above and beyond.
Right.
So expectation, enough room for us to exceed that. That's always what we're trying to do. Easier said than done.
Yeah, for sure.
But we try, and we're not perfect at it, but we try.
Yeah, I mean, how do you deal with the emergency stuff? Do you just say, hey, you gotta wait? Like, cause like we're having that stuff of like, well, what if like an emergency is like a website went down for e-commerce? They're
That's a
missing.
nightmare.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare situation.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
it's a
mean, if
nightmare.
that's the case, just forget everything and do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But like every client says like, hey, this is an emergency, right? I was curious, like, do you guys like put the expectation, say, hey, we get to you like 48 hours, you know?
Yeah, if like an emergency comes up, especially for a website, if it's like a commerce website's very tricky because it's their digital storefront.
Yeah.
And it's like it's all of a sudden their store just disappeared.
Yeah.
Or their presence. And it is emergency. It's an emergency. And
Yeah.
we do our like in that situation, because it's high stakes.
Yeah.
We'll scramble and make sure we're working through evenings for sure.
Yeah.
And around the clock, and we get whoever the web developer is on that project to like prioritize, like take everything off your plate, focus on that right now. Like pause, do this right now. So those are
Yeah.
the things that we can't, because it's so critical. But if it's like, hey, we want to come up with a campaign strategy, well, if it wasn't planned out, a lot of us, you have to plan out in advance. If it's not planned out, we try to like, for that week, try to like tell clients like, hey, we are out. And not everyone's a fan of that, because some businesses, they want the access to you, and we kind of try to set that. And it's once 1 week out of the year, you know. We don't do that all the time, so it's tricky. It's not an easy conversation with everybody. Some people are okay with it, no issues. I'd say at least half people are like, yeah, we're actually on vacation that time too, so that kind of tends to work out. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, so whenever you started Freestyle, how many employees did you have?
Well, shoot. First time when I started, I'll tell you a little bit story on how I started the company. So I went to OU from 02 to 07. I was on a 5-year plan. I was a super senior. And the last year, I was very close to finishing. I switched majors a lot. That was the story behind
What
the
was
school.
your major?
I was originally zoology. I was trying to be pre-med, doctor. So in our culture, you're either a doctor, a lawyer, or like an engineer.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do. If you're not, you're a failure. Like that's the
kinda
culture.
same for me.
That's the culture. So I get that. So
Yeah.
it's like there's a pressure for the parents. Like you need to become a doctor, engineer. Like, you have to be a very respected profession, and
Yeah.
doctor's always the goal. And being the youngest of 3, there was some pressure. Like, okay, the 2 older were not a doctor, you should try zoology. So I, going to college, not knowing what I wanted to do, was a zoology major, and I enjoyed it, but I couldn't see myself being a doctor going through. I was like, man, for my rest of my life, I'm gonna be a doctor. Nothing against that. I just wasn't. I didn't have that passion connection.
Yeah.
And so that's when I went through the whole major. I went through a whole around the world of different majors. So zoology at first, psychology, enjoyed it. But then I took a film class and I kind of fell in love with film. But I switched to business because I was encouraged to study business because business would be, a skill you would use. And at the time, there was no minor. I think I had like 18 or 21 hours of business, and those classes came in clutch with accounting, financials, statistics. I took all those are some of the really key classes that really helped me understand business. But then I went back to film, and I finished with film because I loved it. It was so much fun. I was like, man, this is something I can be passionate about. I enjoy it. And at the time, YouTube is launching, social media is taking off, and I just love that type of digital content. And I was just, spending so much time. I mean, my kids are doing it all the time, YouTube kids and whatever, but like, I just really enjoyed it. And knowing that there was a career path there, I was exploring it and really falling in love with film and filmmaking. So then when I graduated in 2007 with a film degree, with a little bit of background in business, I was already actually freelancing my last year because I was a super senior, so I wasn't a full-time.
Got you.
And I was shooting commercials and videos and event videos. I even did a wedding or something. It was not for me. I did one. I was like, this is one and done.
Yeah.
It's just
high stress
live. And then it's happening right now. I was more in the line of like coming up with scripts, storytelling, a little different.
Yeah.
And then, but it's whatever that paid the bills, right?
Right.
We took whatever job was necessary to buy the gear and build out the gear and keep making money. And I had so much momentum going into that I felt like I could just do this full time. So that's when I started the business. A year freelancing, then I started Freestyle in 2007. And I just started landing more clients. And then the recession hit, right? So I'm going to come back to recession. So
when you started, you had employees?
No, it was just me freelancing.
Oh, okay,
just
perfect.
I didn't even answer your question. The whole story without answering your question. Had no employees, but we would, I bring on contractors if I needed help. Bring on somebody. It was just me, and my brother did help. So my brother was helping me as well here and there. And I'll backtrack a little bit. I'll come back to the recession here in a minute. Growing up going through college, I worked in the family business. So my family's home building, home creations. And I worked as a superintendent. I worked in the office support staff. I helped with marketing. I even did sales for a while. And that one was probably my favorite one because I'd be sitting inside an air-conditioned room versus being out in the field building a house. In the summers, we always did it in summers. And it was so hot in the summers in Oklahoma. And you're outside all day long.
Right.
And sales I enjoyed because I get to talk to people and show them houses. I'm like, I'll show you the house. Here's the house. Here's this. Here's the feature.
Probably a good skill to learn.
Yeah, good skill to
learn.
learn. So I kind of learned those throughout college. And then, recession hits. And I think that was very challenging. And I learned a lot, I think, outside the box. I started like renting out gear. Like for a while there, Freestyle had a rental division where we were renting out gear and make half of our revenue was just from renting out gear and studio space or whatever,
Yeah.
At first, I didn't even have the studio, so it was just the gear, the HVX200 cameras at the time, Panasonics. And we did a lot of freelance for shoots. I worked on film sets in the film industry, just whatever there was.
Yeah.
Whatever there was, I'm like, okay, we can do this. Then eventually, I did that for a long time. So 2014 or 13, one of those years. It's been a while. That's when I hired our first marketing position because I was like working with these agencies, freelancing. I was like, man, we need to really think marketing, advertising because the challenge there was we'd work so hard. We'd bring on a client, shoot the video, we're done. Move on to the next one. So there was so much hustle in bringing on business.
Yeah.
There's so much hustle.
Yeah.
And I feel like at the time, which is a good skill set to have, is I was spending half of my time just networking and trying to bring in business, marketing it, putting on social media. And I'll get back to that in a minute because I was marketing ourselves. So I was already doing marketing. I was like, on social media. posting our behind the scenes. I felt like I was really good at that. I loved it.
Yeah.
Posting on social media. And hired our digital marketing strategist, Kelly, who's now my business partner. She had agency background. I did not. I worked for the agencies on the video side,
That's awesome.
but not on the agency side doing campaigns, right?
Right.
So she came on board, and I got very lucky.
Yeah.
A lot of that was luck, because to find the right person who's great, who understands it, can help build it from the ground up, that combined with a business coach. My dad had recommended this book called E-Myths.
I have read
And
those.
that E-Myth combined with the business coach really helped me get out of the mindset of doing the work
Yeah.
and delegating, because you read the book, so I think it's been a long time, but Sarah the baker, I think Sarah she likes baking. She starts her own store, and then realizes she's having to do all these things, wear all these hats, clean the place, market the place, run the transaction, the back end books and all that stuff. She's barely baking.
Right.
She's not even baking anymore. She's running a business. And now she has to decide if she's going to be a businesswoman or a baker. There's nothing wrong with either. So which one do you want to do?
Right.
And that's like where I had that hard time letting go a little bit. It's like, I enjoy the film stuff. I enjoy the production.
Yeah.
But to step away and allow somebody else to do it and run the business, working on the business, it was, I remember one of the moments where it was a very challenge for me to let go. And no matter who you hire, they're just going to do things differently.
Yeah.
And you have to get used to, it's not wrong, it's just different. It's not how I would have done it. And being comfortable, allowing them to do it their way. And even if someone's going to make a mistake, allowing them to grow from that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes it's not even a mistake. They just keep getting better. Oh, that was different. Then maybe I learned something from it. And there's people I've seen who were from intern to like 5 years in. I'm like, wow. They've grown so much, and just allowing them to do that. And then training is very important. Gosh, for a while there, we were doing podcasts, a lot of different podcasts and Audible books.
Yeah.
Lots of different Audibles. We have an Audible account. Training seminars, coaches. We did that for a while. And I think my business coach really helped me a lot. Again, I got lucky to have a business coach who's now retired. Rob Garibay was his name. And man, we learned so much. Like I was telling you, like you get the people you deserve, right? I mean, he was so real with me. And I think sometimes people don't like that, but
that's the person you need. Yeah.
Someone's real. It's like, man, I could do a better job. Oh my gosh. And time management, I was always like, I'm so busy. But then he taught me like, well, we all have the same amount of time. You're not prioritizing properly. It's like, yes, I am prioritizing. Look, but then when he breaks it down for you, it's like, you need to prioritize this way. Like this other person's really successful. They don't have more time than you do.
Right.
It's like, you have to prioritize different. You have to think about different things. You have to learn, like prioritize learning at the top, then execution, delegation, and then being a good leader. So it was just reorganizing how I prioritize stuff. And he created this diagram for me. Urgent, important in the center. Urgent, not important on the outside. And urgent, not important might be something that gets your attention right there. I need to do this, right? You get so busy doing it, but is it really moving the needle forward for your vision of what you're trying to achieve?
Gotcha.
Those are two different things.
Yeah.
Just because it's urgent, fire comes up, and you're putting it out, which is important, don't allow all these other things to distract you from what's in that center.
Yeah.
That center is very important. It's very important, but may not be urgent. That's the thing. Because it's not urgent, it's not tapping you on the shoulder. I need your attention. You're not so focused on it. So he really allowed me to pull that. It's important, but it's not urgent.
Yeah.
That focusing on that prioritization really helped change my mindset.
Also, you can delegate that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And then honestly, like how about something you said, like, you let other people do it. It's a different. But also, like, I had a problem with delegating people because I thought I can do, like, a different job, a better job, sometimes. But at the same time, also, like, building a company, I'm pretty sure, like, I don't know if you agree with me, but I wanted to build the company because I didn't want to be corporate. I wanted to have a creative field. Everybody's be creative and then have fun and while doing it. That's what I wanted to build. But at the same time, once we building the company and the building kind of structure, you have to have a structure, and the creative, in a way, has to be structured. So like I got big into the book called Story Brand 2.0. and then that's like something that kind of the creative step-by-step process. So we kind of we do teach people here, say, hey, this is how you think, this is how good creative is. So it's kind of like we're delegating, but like a lot of people in the team member have a same thought process, so it comes out kind of, it's a standardized quality, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I had a lot of difficulties delegating till, okay, I gotta educate. I just can't just say, hey, figure this out. You know what I mean? I
Right.
do that sometimes.
Yeah, just figure it out. And a lot of times we as entrepreneurs have to figure it out because
Yeah.
there's a lot of figuring out. Even if you have coaches, business coaches, and mentors,
Yeah.
there's so much gaps that you
Yeah.
have to like kind of just figure out. And it's very easy to say, well, I figured it out. Why can't they figure it out? So
Right.
just figure it out. So that's just very true. There's elements that you just kind of have to figure out by just
Yeah.
going through the process. But you're delegating, they're creating systems and processes for you.
Yeah.
And it seems like you had a vision, a culture that you wanted to create that was you. You didn't want to be in corporate, and you want to create something that's your feel, your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like what, a lot of entrepreneurs, including myself, always want is like, I want to build my own thing. You don't want to be corporate. I want to build my own thing, my own vision. And there is a lot of reward there of knowing that you had this vision. You created this from the ground up. It's so hard to build any company from the ground. I don't care what industry it's in. It's got to be so hard to build it from the ground up. And there's so much respect towards people like you I have respect for all entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
it's
for
like,
sure.
it is not easy. It's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And then the buck stops with you. So when you go home at night, even if it's a evening, weekend, like there's times where I could put the kids to bed and I have to pull our laptop out. I'm like, okay, we need to respond to this email. This is going on. And, that is important, but depending on what phase you're at, you can delegate that. Like this year, I've been at a phase where I haven't had to do much, if not any of that. Which I'm very lucky, but I did so many of that for years. For years, we did that.
Yeah.
And now we have a team that's, running that day to day, and I'm able to enjoy my nights and weekends
That's
a
awesome.
lot more.
Yeah. And then like I always have the respect of, like, I see your company stuff and your social media stuff, and then you are promoting within, like kind of like, hey, this is a promotion, and then, hey, congratulations or whatever. I think we should do that for like posting those kind of stuff, but you know what I mean?
Just highlighting people.
But
I care about them.
I really love that how you guys do it, but like, how do you lead them to say, like you're saying, like, I think that's the most like rewarding stuff, because I have a person here working for me that started intern. She's like now like PPC digital campaign manager and stuff. Like it's cool, to see those kind of
growth,
stuff.
yes.
Yeah, but like I was wondering, like, like ChatGPT asked you too, but like how do you lead them to? Do you like tell them from the start, say, hey, this is like endless possibility in this company, or like you just keep them saying like, like how I'm kind of doing it is like, hey, okay, you got to this point. You did a good job here. Let's do next thing. Just continue success.
Like a growth path,
yeah,
for sure. For
like,
growth
I want to
path.
see from like 6 months, I want to see this, and then you can be this or whatever.
Right.
Like I continually try to do that, but I'm pretty sure you do a better way, but I was just curious.
It's just creating a growth path is what we got really good with our quarterly team reviews, and in there we include a growth path questionnaire, and we did it a lot. I mean, it was every quarter. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
We don't do it quarterly anymore. But I think when we were small, we wanted to make sure we were just pivoting very fast. This is before COVID. Everyone's in the office 8 to 5. I'm like before kids, so I have all this time, right? We're going fast, and we're getting. I feel like that's like our quarterly reviews were like a feedback loop with the team, like a formal feedback loop.
Do you guys do it with it, like with a team, or like
individually, one-on-one with the team?
Gotcha.
So the leadership, their leadership team now at this point would review their team. So I'm not included in any of those reviews anymore.
Okay.
But say our creative director has 4 people under her, she'll review those 4. Our accounts director has 4 people under her, they'll review them, and then our COO has all the executive reporting to her. That's how they kind of like break it down. So it's in chunks of 4.
You like the team of 4?
This is what's been working for us. I've seen it more, and I might have to get more in at some point. But that's how 4 is manageable.
Got you.
Because when I was in the role, because I was at one point I was the creative director and I was managing 4 or 5 people. And I feel like 4 was a number that you can give enough attention to. More than that felt like I wasn't getting enough time with people.
Gotcha.
So it felt like for me at least.
Yeah.
But I know people who manage a lot more than that. So I mean, that's just, for me, it felt good. And as we grow, that number will probably increase. But that worked out really well. And just getting that feedback loop and seeing where the growth path is. That's what I was trying to say. So figuring about where do they want to be? What's their vision for them, right? And what is that we can do to help you get there? I remember our Princess, who's a director of operations, VP director of operations now. She's awesome. Yes, shout out to Princess. She's very organized. And she actually started off as a video producer. That was a role she got hired for. And she was our editor.
Yeah.
She'd coordinate production. Her background's in video.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, her background's in video. Most people don't know that because she's been in this role for so long. And going through those review processes, she's like, man, I really like to be organized with details. That's really where I want to be, not so much on the editing or so much on the producing role or client facing. She wanted to, so then we created this new role for her, which at the time we didn't, when I first started, we didn't have a director of operation because there wasn't like a full-time position for operations. But then she grew into that role, and as we grew as an agency, she's the director of operations. So she's super organized, all the finances, all the HR documents, all the back-end office stuff. She does all that, but her background was in video, and she transitioned. But when you think about it, a producer, what is a producer? Producer is like, because I was a producer at one point, a movie producer. I was doing films, and producer is like an entrepreneur that creates this film, and the film is its own LLC. Yeah. And you have to be organized and detailed, and you've got payroll, and you're making it all work, and you're delegating a lot. You're delegating a lot out. So that transitioned really well to running in the operations from our perspective. And even for me as an entrepreneur, like filmmaking, each film is like its own entrepreneurial project. Yeah. So it really transitioned very well. And that's probably one of the reasons I love film, because you get to make a film, you move on to the next one, you have this fully deliverable package. Yeah. And then you move on to the next one, and you have this fully deliverable package. And it's really
So
fun.
Whenever you do like those film stuff, because I always wonder like, do you include everybody in the office to work on the film?
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question. The short answer is no. Every film that we've partnered on, there's a different capacity. The earlier films, gosh, I even wrote, directed, and shot those. So the early films that you probably haven't seen, nor should you see. We don't want. We're
I'd love to see it.
Vimeo password protected.
Is it protected?
Password protected. Yes. Password protected. Maybe I'll send you a link to it. Those are earlier films, and then just laughing here. So
well, that's a growth though. Like if you can laugh at your previous project, that is a growth.
You got to start somewhere, right? That is growth, exactly. The first stuff is so bad, but we have different capacities. So if someone who wants to be involved, a lot of times our creative director does some of the creative art pieces. So maybe in the scene there's a phone, but there's a background on the phone. There's design elements for that. So they can do the design elements for that. But we've had our video team be behind the scenes photography, maybe behind the scenes film making of, cutting the trailer, creating the posters, design material, t-shirt design for festivals, press releases. So we've done those just depending on our bandwidth and capacity during that season. So every film has had a different creative approach to it. And then more recently, not in the early stages, more recently on the very select few films, we've been able to help come in on the investment side or fundraising. We know people who want to invest in films and help raise that fund. So areas we help out these days is the funds and then the marketing of the actual film. That's kind of like, in a nutshell, our involvement with these films now.
That is awesome, because I think that it is crazy to me. I don't know, maybe like the people are growing. I think as the Oklahoma community-wise, like I invite the guests like Kyle and Kyle Harris or Kyle Roberts or whatever.
Yes, all the Kyles.
Yeah. Everybody that comes in here, like even like a makeup artist or like, cinematographer and all that kind of stuff. It seems like everybody's like leveling up like every year. And then even like we talk about, like a film investment, how they, raising money, but also those film, like, I used to work on the films probably never get made and never get sold or make no dime, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But now they're talking about, making a profit.
Yes.
Like, I was like, man, this is like becoming a real thing in Oklahoma. Or
Yes.
like, it's just like people just are getting better. The people I know is getting better, or just Oklahoma in general is getting, probably both.
Probably both.
But,
Yeah. Everyone's getting better. Oklahoma has so much good talent.
Yeah.
And those people that started off, I mean, gosh, we worked on Post-Human Project, if I'm not mistaken, like a long time ago on that film. And we were all just figuring it out.
Yeah.
In full transparency, we were all just figuring it out. Now
Right.
these people are making everybody who's ever involved with that. I mean, you, where you're at here today, Kyle Roberts with his, next film that he made, it was just so much of a bigger production than his, his first film, and where we are at today. And everybody who's worked on these projects, it's just you keep at it, you keep working hard. There's this book called The Compound Effect. I don't know if you've read it. Oh, who's the author? So many authors out there. But the book's called The Compound Effect, and it's all about like those little micro wins every day, just a little bit better. I mean, you probably know this better than anybody else when it comes to working out. I'm still trying to get there. I'm working on it, but like you like, it's all about the small gains in the gym.
Yeah,
it's just very small gains every day, every week, and in business, very similar. Keep learning, keep getting better, and try to make sure everybody around you gets better and improves, and there's a growth path for them. And you just start elevating naturally every year over year. Then you look back. We do an end-of-year recap just so we understand like all the successes that we had. We want to celebrate those because sometimes you forget all the wins you had. And that to me has been one of the biggest motivators for the staff going into like the next year.
Got you.
Because looking back the rear view mirror, what all have we achieved? And we just start listing off. And we spend time as a team brainstorming. We're trying to make a list of all the things we achieved. And everyone just gets so excited.
Yeah.
Like, wow, we just did that 1 quarter, or we just did that in 6 months. And we look at it like, we did that. We achieved all this over a year. And we just look back, we're like, wow.
How do you do that? Like, is that like a quantity of like how many videos you made, how many websites you made?
That's a great question. Some like big goals that we just go around the room. We just go around the room, and someone says, hey, we closed on a multi-million-dollar ad campaign. We did our first multi-million-dollar ad campaign, or whatever it might be at the time. And they're like, wow, we did like this $3 million campaign. Like, that's a big deal because, maybe last year the budget on the biggest campaign might have been $1 million or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we're growing and getting those experiences. Or it might be we did a commercial that won this award and the budget of that commercial was X amount. For someone, that's a win, right? So each person has their own different types. For me, it might be, man, we got on the Inc. 5000 list, fastest growing company, ranked number 14 in Oklahoma, which I'm like,
awesome.
Oh, that's a national thing. So in Oklahoma's number 14th. That was a big deal for us, and we're like, wow, that's a 3-year goal. So look back at your finances for 3 years, and they see, okay, what was your percentage growth? And we did really well that year. And obviously the smaller companies have a higher percentage growth than the bigger companies, right? Because they're growing. But that to us was like a big win for me. I brought that one up. And what else? Like Out of Exile, the year that we helped with Out of Exile. When Out of Exile got the distribution this year and they got on the Paramount Plus and all that stuff, that we counted that as a victory. I was like, that's a big milestone. Like, wow. Right. Beforehand, like you said, films are losing money, right? we made this movie, everyone lost money. Okay, that's a success. It's like, we finished it, yay. We got a final edit. We won, yes. And now it's like, not only did we finish it, but the movie's like on airplanes, it's in theaters, it's on digital download and streaming. And that to me is like, wow, you always want to get to that level, but when you're finally there, you're like, wow, so what's the next big thing? So that gets everybody excited, and everyone's going through all the wins that they had for themselves. So video has their department. Design might have, we designed this X project that maybe they can't talk about. I can't talk about it now because I'm on an NDA, but they say, we designed this project, and we can't wait for it to be revealed during this season. They're just so pumped about it, and everybody has their own thing, and the list just keeps growing, and then we keep thinking through all these things we had. And sometimes it's not even like, work like a client project. It might be we rolled out a 401k because for the longest time we didn't have a 401k. Like that's a big milestone. Or we'll say, hey, we were able to, remember the first year we were able to give Christmas week off. That was a big one for a lot of people. Hey, we're at a point now that we can do it. Man, there was times where everyone had to bring their own computer at work. We actually didn't have company computers.
Yeah.
So like, we started from the bottom, right? We had no computers. Everyone
Yeah.
had to bring their own computer. Now it's like, I remember the year we had computers. That was a big one. It's like, we bought computers for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody has a laptop. Like,
Yeah,
the things that
awesome.
you expect at a company, like, oh, everyone should have a company computer, and we didn't have that at first.
Yeah, I mean, like,
moments.
honestly, I just went to dentist. I mean, like, but yeah, I mean, we didn't have a dental plan or a
plan,
health plan
exactly.
or whatever. Like, whenever we got that stuff for the staff for a couple of years back, I'm like,
exactly.
man, it feels like a real company.
We're a real company. We have computers. We got a dental plan. We have these benefits for the team. It's so true because
Yeah.
you have to start somewhere. Out the gate. From freelancing to that first hire. That first hire has none of the perks.
Right.
And some of the team that have been with me since that, 10 years almost, they go back and they'll bring it up. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, Vahid, do you remember when we didn't have computers? Do you remember when there was no plans?
Yeah.
Do you remember you didn't have an office? Like, yeah, I remember I didn't have an office. So it's just all those things that you're like, wow, just keep the compound effect, keep making those gains every day.
Yeah, it does. I mean, like, I remember, like, I think when I met you, like, renting a rep from you, I think you were like 7 years in the business.
That's right.
And I think you told me that, like, yeah, if you can go through like 7 years,
Yeah.
and then you'll kind of
No.
like have the idea of like a company. I'm like, that was true. That was true.
7
Yeah.
years.
It just takes like it doesn't take a couple years. It takes like 7
7
years.
years is a
I
long
was
time,
like,
too.
damn, okay, well.
And it's a long 7 years. It feels like 10 years.
Yeah, I've been like telling people like, yeah, I've been in 10 years for like
Yeah.
probably 10 years,
Yeah.
But like it's talking about celebration, like Adi is coming up, right?
Yeah.
But I know like last year like I thought you if I remember correctly, like you guys had a booth about freestyle, like have a project or
Yeah.
whatever, and then I was always curious. There was like because like like Adi's stuff, like it costs a lot of money.
It does.
Right, like
yes.
sponsoring it or even like submitting Addies costs a lot. And then like I was like, man, like how does like other agency, is that budget for it? Like do you see the return on it? Like I was like, yeah, it's nice. Like we put it on the like what we want and award and stuff. Is that really affects business or like is that for just a team? Like what's your take on like
Sure.
Addies?
Like the Addy Awards and all that stuff. That's a great
Yeah.
question. It's always challenging with those budgets because there's so many other things we want to apply for that we don't. So if we do Addies, maybe a year we don't get to do the marketinis as much or uppercase, the PR awards. And for us, you said it, is it one of those two? It's both of those. The team want to feel good about the creative they did and that won an award. So we can all say we are an award-winning agency. We did good creative, good work, good results for our customers, for our clients, and our partners. So that's part of it. The other is at this stage, like if we don't have a presence at that, I think it'll look odd at the stage we're in now. Now back then,
Yeah.
we were trying to make a name for ourselves. Like,
Right.
oh, Freestyle won an award. Freestyle did this. Okay, so getting a name out there, potential prospects, clients, and even recruitment people know and hear of us. It's like, oh, the brand gets out there, people see us. So it's hard to quantify the actual results or return on that investment, but I've always been a big fan of that.
Yeah.
I've always been a big fan, so we always go in and we apply, we go for it, and we were so involved one year. We were the creative agency, so we created all the creative. So we donated all our time and service to come up with the whole campaign, the design of everything,
Wow.
the video leading into it. We probably did that like 8-9 years ago. We were the creative, I think. Time goes by really, with COVID, man, time's warped in my head at this
Yeah.
point. But it was a long time ago. That kind of like, for us, that was a way for us to put our name out there for people to get to know who we are.
Gotcha.
So when I'm like looking at hiring, they're going to say, wait, who's Freestyle? We've never heard, like, oh, Freestyle, I heard of them, the Addies. They were the creative team behind that. Okay, like, it solidifies us. It makes us a real company, right? We're real people doing real work out there. And the team is always just so proud and energized to win awards.
Yeah.
Oh, we go out, we'd celebrate, and it just makes them feel good, and them feeling good gives them that energy and motivation to keep pushing, and it creates synergy in so many different areas. So we always do it. We're going to keep doing it. As a matter of fact, we were talking about it today, so we're actually creating the budget and the budget sheet today before I came here, and we are going to do it. I think we'll always do it because I believe it creates a return on multiple areas for the team, for the company, all across the board.
I mean, that is awesome. I think that what I see from you is like so authentic.
Thank
and
you.
then like saying, hey, this is what we create. Like some agency I see is like, okay, this is like, you know, like a kind of see like, well, not like authentic way. Like, so I'm like, well, but like somebody like you doing it, I'm like, well, maybe we should. Then I talk to JC, say, hey, but he's doing it, maybe we should.
He's doing it, we should do it. I love it. I'll take it.
Something like that. And then like also like, you know, like you're right, because like sometime new like like a prospect of the employee or something like that then come in and say, yeah, I've heard of you guys of this and that, and then like some industry like we've been doing a lot of like they're like, oh, they're this company, all that kind of stuff. Like, I don't know them at all.
Right. We never seen them at the Addies. They're not a real company.
Right,
They're not
yeah.
legit.
So
right?
like, it's like crazy to me. So, but yeah, I mean, we will submit like people like put in like what was the best work or whatever,
Yes.
and then all that kind of stuff. So it is fun, you know.
It's fun.
And then I have you know, Addie's like last year's like a group picture from the team, and then I put it on the fridge, and it just kind of makes me feel good because of that the people from last year stayed this year.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was like a big goal for me,
Right.
is like not have a turnover.
Yeah.
So that was a big thing. So it just makes me feel good, you know. So like that's something that, you know, growth, but also like growing together as a team. That's the most rewarding, rather than like, okay, we did X amount percentage, you know, revenue and stuff. But I think that it comes along with it, because like my grandma told me that, you know, if you follow the relationship, money will follow you.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of the vibe.
It's about the
of
people.
yeah. So it's just like it just feels good, you know. Like that. I think that's probably why we do Addies.
Yes.
I don't know.
I love it. That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just keep doing that. And then those pictures, you mentioned that. I have pictures from Addie's right in front of my desk every year. I put the new ones on there. I'm like, man, okay, these people, like, a lot of them, most of the same staff is still there. And any business will have turnover. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens. People move, change industries. I mean, moving is the toughest one. Whenever like the other spouse gets a job somewhere else, like, no, don't leave. But we're not at a point to where we can 100% work remotely. I think we're trying to work towards that. To some people can stay on, but it depends on the position. But it happens, and you know, keep a good relationship with people.
Do you
always.
work remotely, or do you work?
So we're hybrid.
Okay.
We're in the office Mondays and Wednesdays. Everyone's in the office. It's a packed office that day, which is great. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Friday is a hybrid option. So it depends on what the teams want to do that day. A lot of times, especially video's out on sets, they're filming. So they're the ones that probably see the most, whether they're on the studio, they're on the editing, on their computer, they're probably in the office the most. But Fridays, usually most people are working from home. It's more quiet. I like to be in the office myself personally. I feel like I get more work done, and my environment is a good setup. My house was not designed with a work office in mind. Like it doesn't have my work office is in my master bedroom. So me and my wife both have like a little corner where we have desks, and my desk is this big. It's not, and I could get a bigger one, but I just work better at the office, or at Freestyle office, bigger room. I have a door. It's just set up for the monitor. Everything's there. It's just a perfect setup. And even if someone's not there, it's quiet. So when it's quiet, I get to get work done. So that works really well. Another thing is I distract people. I'm a talker. So one thing is, like, when I'm in the office, I'm probably talking to a lot of people, so they're not able to get their work done. So I'm like mindful of that. I'm like, okay, maybe it's, some people work better when they're also focused in their own zone with no distractions. So we're flexible on that. But 2 days to be there with a team, see each other, because you want to see each other, build that relationship. So we do that at least twice a week. We see each other.
That's awesome. I totally agree with the talking too much aspect of it, because like a couple people say, like, if I go to coffee shop, I get so much more done, no distraction. I was like, all right, then think about it. I'm like, maybe I'm the distraction.
Maybe they're just trying to get away from me. Really, they're trying to get away from me, right?
Yeah, so maybe I just like, you know, sometimes I just get stuff done of what I wanted to get down, like personal stuff during the day or something. And then like what I can just do by myself, I just come in late, just
Yeah.
do it here by myself. That's more good for me because I don't have a distraction either, nobody asking me questions. But yeah, I mean, like also like a lot of people who are listening is probably like a beginner stage of a career.
Sure.
And then I think I had a guest, which was my employee last week, was just college graduate. Like we intern a couple years later, now still here, all that kind of stuff. But what do you look for like people working for you, like to like apply for you? Like
Looking to hire. What am I looking for?
Do you read resume, or like do you have somebody to pitch to people?
I haven't recently.
Okay.
But I've read a lot of resumes in
Yeah.
my career, so I could definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
What we look for, it's been evolving. This stage in my career, I'm definitely trying to find people that I know more so, or someone in our teams work with in some capacity.
So you already know.
So we know they're a sure shot. The reason I said is, you hire on somebody, they could be great on resume, they could be great in the interview, but they come in, you're like, oh man, that didn't work out for whatever for whatever reason.
I know
it just wasn't what we thought it was gonna be. And if you have a role that's open, let's just say it's a video editor, and you're like, man, you know who we need? If I can base off my network, say, okay, this is the person I think would be great, then I might just go,
talk to them.
Talk to them. Hey, do you know someone like your position that might be, a lot of times they're freelancing. So in this situation, I might be freelancing, and a lot of times I've gone to a lot of freelancers.
Yeah.
Hey, you're freelancing. Do you want to come in house?
Mm.
And sometimes it's a yes. Sometimes it's like, man, I love the freelancing. I'm, okay, fine. So then I'll try to find someone somebody else knows from word of mouth. They'll know someone's looking.
Yeah.
And then they'll connect us in something that happens. But it really depends. I mean, we've hired people from so many different ways, but majority actually have been the traditional. They fill out a resume, they submit, we go through the interview process, and we go through a few rounds, and we hire them. That's probably the majority of it. But to answer your question, what do we look for?
Do they have to have a college degree?
Everyone we've hired, I think, has had a college degree. So I hate to say this, but I think so for what we've done so far, it has to be a college degree. But I'll tell you this, if someone comes in and they have no college degree and their video production, content creation is just mind-blowing, I don't care about the college degree.
Right.
But they just all have had it
Yeah.
by default. So that's a very interesting question. And I think it'll gravitate more towards that in the future,
Yeah.
honestly, because people are able to teach themselves a lot more these days outside of a traditional
They have
college
to have a
university.
super good portfolio.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. As long as the portfolio is really good. Okay, they got the skills. Okay, so that's one check mark. They know what they're doing. Okay, I ask a lot of situational questions. Have you been in a situation where you had conflict with a coworker? How did you handle it?
Yeah.
Tell me about that story.
Yeah.
And they'll go through, had this conflict. Here's what it was.
Yeah.
Here's how we resolved it, or it didn't resolve, or this person got fired, or then here's the reason I left. It goes different directions. But I'm always trying to see how they handle conflict.
Okay.
Because the other check mark is, personality-wise, how do you handle conflict? How do you handle these situations? And I kind of go through whatever challenge we've had maybe recently. Sometimes it might be, how do you handle a deadline that's really high pressure? Like, how did you handle that? Give me an
That's a
example.
good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had this deadline come up. Tell me about a time you had high pressure for a client or whatever. How did you handle it?
Only answer I will know is I'll get it done.
I'll get it done. We will get it done. There you go. It's like, okay, yeah, exactly. And people know through those questions what kind of expectations there are.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do in the interview process is help each other understand, are we a correct fit? I'm not trying to hire that person. I'm not trying to sell them on the job. And I've seen that happen a lot where the person who's interviewing is trying to sell the other person the job. It's like, we're great. We have a great culture. I've did this. That's great now, but last thing I want is for someone to be like, well, you told me in the interview, you guys are remote all the time. I'm just using as an example.
Yeah.
But your expectation is 3 times. I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah.
That's never happened, but I'm just using it as an example of like, you want to make sure, hey, we sometimes work more than 40 hours a week. I want you to know that. Are you okay with that? Like, that's not a selling. It's like somebody's like, oh, I don't know if I want to work 50 hours a week. I mean, I want to know that before that person's hired. For them, for their sake, for my sake. Like, hey, sometimes we go over.
Yeah.
And we try to keep it balanced, but the work has to get done. Clients pay us. I mean, the client's boss, right? Not like, I mean, you want to find the right clients. You don't just always say client's boss all the time, because that could create an issue in itself.
Right.
But you have to find the balance of like, your job here is to help the client. You know, that's what we're trying to do here. So, and then culture fit. What do they know about the company? Are they just going through an interview? Have they done the research?
Yeah.
How much do they know about us?
Right.
If someone comes in, they don't know anything. I've had that happen before.
Yeah.
It's like, you don't know anything about us. You haven't even been to our web. Like
Yeah.
like that's a red flag. It's like, you're just doing interviews at this point. Like,
Yeah.
I want them to choose our company. Like, why are you coming to us? Why did you apply here?
Yeah.
What is it about us that drew you to us?
Got you.
Right?
Yeah.
So, we know about you. This is what I'm passionate about. Another thing is longevity. Do you, like, are you here for a stepping stone? And some people I've had a person tell me, I'm here literally as a stepping stone. I'm like, okay, like, at least he's being honest about it. Like, and we end up hiring the guy. It's like, okay, yeah, he's honest. We did. He was honest. And we like, and I'd rather know I'm gonna get 2 years out of someone than all of a sudden pull the rug from underneath me and have like all of a sudden give me like a 2-week notice. You know,
Right.
I've had people tell me like, hey, I might be here for like a few years. That's my goal.
Yeah.
I'd rather know up front so I can plan for it.
Yeah.
Like, it won't hurt my feelings if someone's like, especially if up front they're like, hey, I want to be here for 3 years, 2 to 3, or 3 to 5, whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I can expect it.
Yeah.
And we'll grow you to that path, and we'll have a plan for you to move to wherever career you want to go next. And we can bring in somebody. It doesn't disrupt us.
Yeah.
That's key. So I'm always trying to get better at that. It's like I'm still figuring that out, but I'm getting better at it. I'm having people giving me expectations on the other side. Like, how long do you want to be here? Like, what do you see? Some people say, man, I want to build a career. That's what I want to do. I'm like, okay, great.
Yeah.
Some people, you know, they don't want to, and I've hired them, you know, and they end up staying, or, you know, or they stick to their word. I've had someone who'd said, hey, I want to be here for like this many years, and I'm gonna go freelance, and they stuck to their word, and on the dot, on the time to hit 12, they're like right on the time. I mean, man, no budging on that. So I was like, okay, but at least they were, you know, gave me heads up, and I appreciate heads up more than anything else, because that doesn't put me in a bind and the team in a bind. So. Culture fit, obviously culture, character, you can't teach character, you know, you can't, it's hard to coach someone through if they're not the right fit, or they're abrasive or something with your team. And just because someone's not a right culture fit for me, doesn't mean they're not a right culture fit for somebody else. Just because it's culture doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Maybe the culture is they're at an agency where they work 50, 60 hours, normal. And that's the culture they want. They want to crank it out. That's what they thrive on.
Yeah.
We don't want to work 60-hour weeks every week. Like, we want some balance. You know, a lot of us have kids at home.
Yeah.
That will create conflict if there's a group that's maybe constantly working 60, other teams working constantly 40. That might create conflict at some point. So you have to find like what kind of culture are they looking for? What is it they're looking for? I've seen culture conflict a lot with creative and account services. Like, a lot of times, like creative is trying to do the best quality creative, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's great, because coming from the creative side, I feel like creative is almost never done. It just keeps going until somebody's like, all right, this is done. You know, like, you have to set this deliverable based off the time. Client needs it. The deadline's the client needs it now.
For sure.
Yeah, and account side, they're just trying to satisfy that deliverable date. They're trying to get, you know, the results driven, and it's hard to quantify. Did this creative create that result?
Yeah, what's good and what's bad. Yeah.
It's very hard to quantify, and there's a subtle art in there that you have to be able to see. It's like, man, that creative, we just know that's probably the reason that they created these snowball effects for them to have these results.
Yeah.
So it's not all crystal clear.
Yeah.
But, you know, you try to quantify it based off the clicks and the traffic and the flow, and if they fill out forms, you can see you got a client, you got a lead. You're able to some extent, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the creative, like, win the pitches, and the result keeps the client.
Yes, you need the results. You need the case studies. That's another thing I'll say about these awards is if you're able to turn those into case studies, that's been a big effort of ours as well, to show results, case studies. Like, when you go in for pitches, hey, we had this client, XYZ, or whatever they're called, and ABC client, and their revenue growth was 10%, and here's how much more leads they got. the budget stayed the same. It switched from this to that, and we did this for them, and they got more results. So a lot of times in the pitches, we'll factor in a case study along with the creative, because creative is flashy. Everyone loves creative. Creative is really awesome, though. It's fun. It's the fun stuff.
What do you think about those, like, you're talking about hiring freelancers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to do that too. Like, you know, the people I already know, like freelancer, but like, so sometimes, you know, like sometimes I'm having like a dilemma of, okay, maybe I should hire people who are maybe more office oriented. You know, so more following the structure. Freelancer is their own boss, right?
Yeah.
So like versus like, okay, like agency experience, they know what to expect, you know, following the timeline, you know, pros and cons to both sides for me. But I wanted to hear your take on it.
Man, yeah. So a freelancer, like you mentioned, a lot of times freelancer wants to have their own schedule, their own flexibility, which we try to work with them on some extent. But agency experience, from my experience, has been, it's worked out best for us because they know what they're signing up for. And a lot of time is, we have lost people who come to agency, they're like, wow, this is not what we want. We don't want an agency. They go in-house. So if we lose someone, sometimes it might be because they want to go in-house and just focus on one client, one campaign. There's nothing wrong with that. I've seen people go from in-house to agency, do it for a while, go back to in-house, and realize, nope, I'm going to go back to agency. So it just depends on the phase in life they're in, you know? So they can just be like, hey, I want to not hustle and focus on so many different clients. I need to focus on one. And then they're like, you know what? Now I'm bored of it. I want to go back to agency. So I've seen both. But if someone has had agency experience, they know what they're getting themselves into. And that's a lot of it. If they haven't, sometimes people thrive in it, they love it. That's great. But then they'll realize, man, I want to focus on one client. You know?
Yeah, I mean, like agency life is kind of like different.
It's different.
I don't know how to explain. Like, it's like people who work in like desk job or whatever. It's just different.
It's different.
I don't know. I never worked in a desk job before in my life, but
it's different. It is a different pace.
Yeah.
The pacing, and it's just different. It really is. So just knowing what they're signing up for is always beneficial. Just seeing if that's what they want to do. I mean, we try to be as clear, as transparent, and set expectations of what could be the worst thing. Like, hey, here's what a bad day would look like. Are you okay with that? You know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like those bad days, you know, like I heard a quote the other day. No quote, like I was like having a dinner with I went to like some company's Christmas party, and then the guy was saying like there, I guess like he had a second kid, and then his wife is like, I'm done because I don't want to deal with this whatever.
Right.
And then he told his wife, say, don't think about quitting on kids right now because that's the hardest. Right. Whenever you're happy, then whenever you want to quit having kids, then let's quit having kids. I was like, that's a good saying.
Right.
Don't quit stuff whenever it's hardest. You know?
When you're happy, it's like, is this, because it comes in waves.
Yeah.
There's challenging days. Everybody has challenging days, weeks. I mean, in every industry, every people I meet with who are not even in our industry, like, man, I had a tough day. Here's what we did. I'm like, man, that sounds pretty bad. Like, I'm like, oh boy, I'm glad we didn't have to go through that. Like, I hear all sorts of stuff, and it comes ups and downs.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
When was the biggest moment for like your business journey? Say, oh, I made it. Did you have that moment?
I feel like I have a lot of those moments.
That's
As
good.
we grow, I'm like, oh man, we made it. Like, whenever we got our first office space, because for the longest time, Freestyle didn't have an office space for 3 years. I mean, I was practically freelancing out of my house. You know, I didn't have a space. I'm like, office space. Like,
was that the
more one? Yeah. Got that one in late 2009, but I was freelancing in 06, so there was a 3-year gap there where I was working professionally. I had no office space. And when I got the office space, I'm like, man, we're legit. We have an office place we come to. I'm like, that was like a milestone. Then the computers. Yeah. Man, got our own computers. I thought, to me, that was a big milestone. Then we started hiring people, like growing. We had more than just a couple, and we had I remember when we had 4 full-time. For me, I was like, we have 4 full-time. That's a milestone. We're running payroll here. You know? We got an employee handbook, milestone, all the basic stuff, right? And then when we hit our first million in revenue. To me, that was a huge milestone. It was first million is so hard in revenue.
Yeah.
I just remember that was so hard. And we got there the next year, which was like 1.2. It was just
Yeah.
like, what? 20%. It was so like 200, it was just so much easier. And then
Yeah.
we kept growing. And then I'm trying to think what else. Some milestones, like landing specific clients in industries were like milestones, because we're like, wow, we're working with, gosh, Brahms was just a big one. Like I was like, everybody knows Brahms. I go to Brahms all the time. Brahms. And got lucky enough to be working with Brahms.
That's
I'm
awesome.
like, oh my gosh, I'm working with Brahms. Like I can't believe every time on the drive here, I was taking the left to my house and I see the Brahms sign. I'm just thinking, yeah, man, we're working. It's just one of those where I'm just so excited about, and I'm always looking at the content that we produce on that one. I'm sharing it. I'm always just, every time we go there, I tell people it's just the one I don't know, really proud of. It's just a big brand. I love their food. I grew up eating it as a kid. Never thought like I'd be in an agency world to even have them as a client. You know, see what I'm saying? Like I just always grew up enjoying their, being a customer of theirs. And it just, that to me was very big milestone. And then I'm trying to think, buying the office we're in right now. That to me has probably been if you were to say one big milestone, it's that location, that building, because we've been trying to do that for 5 years. It was 2019, saw the building. 2020, COVID happens. We have a letter of intent out. This is March of 2020. We are probably 10% away from agreeing on the sales price.
Yeah.
We're really close. The 10% is really close. And COVID happens, lockdown happens. We step away. We're like, okay, we're not going to counter. They didn't counter. The time's up. We're not going to buy the building because, well, everyone's remote. Who knows what's going to happen? We might lose all our clients for all we know. Everyone might shut down. We don't know. The economy might collapse. We don't know what's going to happen. And then I saw the building still for sale last year. We were able to make a deal work. So we closed on it December of last year. We moved in February of this year. February 15th, we moved in. So it was a process.
Yeah.
It took a lot of capital, a lot of like momentum, all the hard work to get to the point to where we can actually afford to do it. And for us, it was the biggest thing for me. I remember I feel like I was in the stage for a long time. I would go to other agencies, offices, and I'd be like, wow, this is so much better than like our space. Our space is like, and that always, in my mind, we always think like we bring client in or prospect, we're pitching to them. In their mind, it may not be like, oh man, there's this other agency that has in a tower with 2 floors or whatever it may be, all beautiful, and ours is like we're in more, and in a bay. Like it wasn't like anything, and that I was trying to get out of that mindset to like have that presence, and also for it to be a good business investment, because coming from the real estate background, owning your own building is like something that comes naturally to me, and I always wanted to do. So it was a tough one. It was the biggest. I think that was the biggest milestone, and we literally moved in this year. So that's like fresh. It's new. It's every milestone's bigger, right? Every like laptop, it's offering a 401k, health benefits, and now it's like freaking building, which is incredible. So who knows what the next one will be? So just like we said earlier, keep elevating the compound effect. So to me, that space that we have our presence, we're in downtown, we're here to play, and but legitimization of the addies you were talking about. It's like we're legit now. We have a downtown building. We're legit. So it's always like in my mind, we're legit now. We're legit now. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought you were legit for 7 years ago.
Thank you. So it's always like, because I always look at the bigger agencies or the bigger people doing the bigger campaigns. So you might be looking at us and saying like, oh, Vahid 7 years ago was there. But like, we're all like at different stages in our different ages and different career. Like we're always in different places, and the bigger agencies are probably looking at someone who's even bigger. Like, oh man, I can't wait to get to that stage, or expand outside of Oklahoma. Maybe we have a headquarters in Chicago or whatever their visions may be. Ours is to get to that next level, and everyone different phases. They're trying to get to that next level. If you're starting off, you're just trying to get a laptop for people. We were there, we were just trying to get a laptop, man. I remember that one, that laptop. It was such a big deal because it was such a pain point to have to use everyone was bringing their own personal. So that's not, it's not the best situation.
That totally makes sense. Yeah. I mean, well, the end of segment, I do ask a 2 questions.
Okay.
So 2018 is 5 years ago.
2018.
I don't know if you remember what you were doing 2018, because that's pre-COVID. But I do ask everybody is that if you go back to that time, and if you can tell yourself 5 years ago, advice, what advice would you give yourself 5 years ago?
Oh, that's great. Let me think about that. That's a good question. 5 years ago, 2018, my assumption is, I don't have it broken down exactly in front of me, but we probably had just hit our first million in revenue. We were right around that number, and that's when we were looking at getting the office. That year, we were working on a deal, and into that year, we were so bummed. I remember going to winter break, sad because I had to make the tough decision on not signing a lease on a building. And it was just heartbreaking because we had told the whole staff we're working towards this goal, and just numbers didn't make sense. At the end of the day, it came out to be more pricey than I thought it would be. I did play it safe. Sometimes I play it safe. Sometimes I don't play it safe. Just really have to be calculated risk.
You gotta go with the gut sometimes.
You have to go with it. Yeah, it's like you have to be smart. Sometimes you have to play. You're playing not to lose. Sometimes you're playing to win. You just have to be smart about the timing of that. And it was hard for me at the time. I remember that 2018 winter, and I was just on the air. We were on a family vacation on the airplane. That's all I could think about. It's like, did I fail? Did I fail at what we achieved? And am I letting people down? And I stress over things that, looking back 5 years later, I should never have stressed over, because we figured it out. We made it work. And sometimes that stress energy gets a spiral effect.
Yeah.
Of like, I'm not good enough. I can't achieve this. You start I dig myself out of there, turn it around, and I get motivated. Like, people, you persevere, you get past that, because that self-doubt is everyone's biggest. It's not the competition. It's all in here. It's a mental game. And that, just keep pushing strong, was I would tell myself. And just because I lost something here doesn't mean I lost. That means I'm going to move a different direction. I'll win over here instead. And that's a bigger win. I don't know that. 5 years ago. How we moved into a lease, we probably have tapped into a lot more negative cash flow because we were paying a lease at the time. Then we would not have had the cash savings to get to where we were at today to put a down payment for that building. So that building would not have happened had we signed into that lease. I know that now. I didn't know it then, and I was sad about it.
Yeah.
But looking back, why was I sad about it? That was a blessing that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And now we're in a better situation that worked out really well. And even in that process, I lost 2 bids on buying a building. I was sad every single time. I go home, I'd be like, oh man, I failed. I didn't get what I wanted. I pushed so hard for it. And that happens in so many different areas. Even from you're fit, you're really fit, you work out. I've had that challenge with my life so much. I've been up and down. I've peaked at 220 pounds and I've gone down to 170. That's been my ranges. And I was longboarding in how many years ago? 3 years ago, I was longboarding. I flew off of it. So really fast. I broke my elbow and I put on a lot of weight during that time of the injury.
Yeah.
And it's been so hard to get it off. So this year I started off at 200 pounds because I had lost 20 pounds already. 220 was my peak. It was bad. It was the worst I've ever let myself get to. Injuries are bad, man.
Yeah. It's also the same thing, right? Like a negative spiral.
Yes, negative spiral. So you just you don't feel good. So then you eat. And that was my way of, my outlet is eating. I love food, desserts, sweets, fried food, chicken, you name it, I love it. So it's I went downhill, and then with COVID, it's just, I'm a people person, so I'm cooped up and I'm eating my way out of my stress, right? So then I had to get out of that, got to 200. This year got down to 181. But my goal before that injury happened was 172. That's a good weight for me, is 170s.
Yeah.
And that to me is one of the most challenging things.
Yeah.
Because it's so mental, and you have to have that self-discipline to not go home and unload on the pantry. It's there's peanut butter is my weakness. Even if I have all sorts of healthy stuff, man,
you can't have too much.
You can't have too much of anything, even though you want it. And it's okay, don't stress eat. Just because it was a long day or a hard day, just go back to that salad. It's not... Salads, I like salads and stuff. It's not bad. It's just there's only so much apples and bananas and berries and, salads and lettuce and tomatoes and, sometimes you want to eat the carbs, and sometimes I love chocolate, So it's just all those little things. And to balancing it out is very key. And I'm always trying to get better in every category. And for me, it's also a confidence thing. If I get down to my weight of 170, 172, I'm going to be able to fit into my suits I used to fit into. Then I will feel like I look better and I feel confident. Now that I'm more confident, I'm going to be able to present better, be around my team with more energy. I'm going to be more in a better mood because I have that confidence, because I'm at my goal of where I want it to be. So it has this effect on me that I'm trying to achieve. And a lot of times I'll miss a goal. And right now, that the phase I'm in is like, man, I feel like I'm so close. And winter is always the hardest time for me to keep the discipline going. It is hard for me. So I'm like, I feel like I'm tumbling. December is the month I'm just tumbling down.
It's a holiday.
It's Christmas. My birthday. Whatever. It's this. There's so many desserts. People bring packages to you. Here's the vendor gave you this. Oh, it's great. Truffles. I love chocolate truffles. So I just, Oh no. What was your question? I just went on a tangent.
Oh no. I mean, like 5 years ago advice, but like I like that. You know, like you didn't have to stress out the things. You stressed out
for things.
I mean, like I've been doing that too. You know, like we talking about downward spirals, but I do believe in an upward spiral too.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like honestly, like lately, like what I've been doing is like, for example, like I'm on this, business stuff, but also like my YouTube stuff that like sometimes like I'm at night, like midnight, I'm editing videos and then I look at my YouTube analytics. I'm like, damn, this video didn't even get 100 views. Or like what? This made like 2 cents.
Oh,
damn,
I've been there. I know how you feel with that. All
like,
that work and for 100 views.
So like
the return on time is not there at all. It's very clear. It shows the analytics.
Yeah. And I was like, damn. And then, but like I was thinking about, man, there's so many people who want to be a YouTuber. Mm-hmm. There's so many people doing this. And then some people made it. But like I think I just say, well, my biggest strength is my consistency and the discipline.
Yes.
So I'm going to win. And then so whenever I look at those sad moments, I was just like, this is the opportunity I'm going to win.
Right.
You know, like I'm just kind of trying to like turn it in like a real bad things to like, okay, if I just get through it, you know. Usually like it's funny things to me because whenever I have that moment and the next shorts get like 10K views or something.
Yeah.
You know? So that's how it works.
You're doing very well. Well, you're doing better than anybody else in the industry here. Just so you know, like in Oklahoma, at least in our Oklahoma, like you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm going to rephrase my question. If I could go back 5 years, if I can get that negative energy, that self-doubt, or that feeling of failure, like stress of, oh man, I didn't do well, I didn't achieve my goals, keep convincing myself to be positive about it, because that downward spiral isn't going to do me any good. But if I have that positive mindset of like you just said, like, hey, I'm going to keep being persistent, I'm going to push forward, and we're going to pivot a little bit. Maybe the questions are different, maybe the format's a little bit different, keep tweaking, keep improving, and then you'll eventually get there. And it happens. Like I've seen it happen to so many people. It happened for us for that 5 years for the office building, and you're going to look back less than 5 years from now, you're going to have millions of followers, I'm sure. You're going to be like, I was stressing over just 100. Now those views, now people are going back finding those.
Yeah. And
now those are at like hundreds of thousands of views. Yeah. And I've researched influencers because I follow some of them, obviously. And there was like an influencer, I went back 7 years. And his first videos didn't even break 100.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, like, okay. Takes 7 years. Yeah. How long have you been a YouTube influencer? Once a 7 year a year. Yeah. Give it 6 more years, then decide, right? That's how it works.
It was good for me because whenever I start YouTube, like people keep saying like it's a long journey.
It is a long journey.
And then some people takes like to have 1,000 subscribers and then 4,000 watch hours is like it's probably gonna take about a year to 3 years.
Wow.
So my expectation was okay. I'm professional on the video.
I have an advantage. I have an agency. I do video. I can talk to people. Yeah, I totally get it.
I'm going to do it in a half, 1.5 years. That was like my goal. And then I did a year and 45 days. So that was like, okay. That was funny to me because I went back to Japan this year. And
Congratulations,
that was 11 years ago.
Wow.
So then I landed in Tokyo. I hit 1,001. So that was like a very, very monumental moment for me, you know, just my stuff, but yeah.
Sure. See, that's the thing about being ambitious and having big goals.
Yeah.
You'll get yourself further than if you said, okay, I'll just go on the average pace and say, hey, I'm going to do it in half the time. And a lot of successful people that got to where they're at, they might feel like it took them 7 years or 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Gosh, I've been doing freestyle for almost 17 years now.
That's awesome.
That's a long time.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it takes every bit of that time, and just you have to be ambitious, have big but realistic goals, and break it down into steps on how to get there and get your team motivated, get everyone on the same page to push through, get them excited, and you'll get there. And you're gonna, if you have a realistic goal of say 1 million of however many followers or whatever it is, views, I mean, there's no way you won't get there.
Yeah.
You've already achieved. The fitness part, to my opinion, is the hardest one. I'll tell you, that's the hardest one. You got that down, you'll get everything else down.
For me, like, it's like I'm listening about what you said about candy and stuff and the salad and stuff.
Yeah.
I think if I can say the advice, that I don't believe in like a cutting out like a fried food or pizza and stuff. What I've done for whenever I cut weight is that whenever you go out, just have a to-go box right away.
I love that advice.
Just cut it in half.
Just cut whatever it is in half. That's bad,
and
right? If it's fried.
It's not bad. Like, just take
like
it
if the food is bad. Like, if it's food's unhealthy, take half
just
of it.
Half.
If it's healthy, you can eat the whole thing, but if it's
like
not,
fries, it's just the calorie stuff.
You just cut it in half right there.
Cut it in half right there, and then just eat tomorrow.
I love that.
So like if you just do that, you will lose weight.
So my problem is I've been doing the opposite. My kids order their foods, right? So they got 2 kids' meals and mine. So I'll eat mine, then I'll eat theirs too. So I'm quadruple what you're doing. That's my problem. We have lots of room for improvement here. We gotta start from somewhere.
You go half of it, you probably lose quickly.
I just done. You're done. In 6 months, you're gonna see a shredded Vahid.
Yeah. Well, Addie's like, it's on my plate.
You're gonna be like, what happened? I took your advice. I took it all to go. I took half of it to go.
That'd be awesome. That'd be a shorts.
Yes.
We'll send it to you.
Yes.
But how do you see yourself 5 years?
5 years from now? Man, I would love to keep growing the agency. This is a big goal of ours. It may take longer than 5 years, but our goal is in 5 years to expand it outside of Oklahoma. Maybe an office in Dallas or Austin. I just love Austin. I always get drawn to Austin, and keep working with our clients, do bigger and better campaigns, have a bigger impact in the community because of the campaigns. Trying to see what else. Keep growing. If we can double in our size or more, that would be great.
How many team member you guys have?
We're gonna have, so we're hiring 4. We got 2 hires right now. So by January we should have 14, maybe 15 full-timers in our office.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, and a few contractors on top of that. So we have about 4 regular contractors that we work with regularly. It works better. It's just we don't have enough work for them full time, but we're like in that middle ground with them. So and we have 2 fellows, which are paid internships a semester usually. So bodies in the office might be 17.
That's
awesome. Good. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we just keep going, be smart with the hires, and find the right people, and just have fun. That's another thing. I'm not gonna be stressing. How about that? I'm gonna try not to 5 years. He's not stressing. He's just gonna be like, it is what it is. We do our best, and we go from there.
Have fun,
things work out. Get shredded. I'll be shredded in 5 years. Oh man, 6-pack. Less than that. Next year, next summer.
For sure. I mean, like, is there anything else you wanted to share today? Like, I didn't ask.
I'll say this. Since you launched your YouTube and your social media, that is something that's always caught my attention. I've been following you and really impressed because there's not too many people doing that here from my perspective, who are agency owners. And it's very, very important for the owner to not only be the face, but also to have a voice in the community, to have a brand that has an audience. And I think that's going to take you to that it's going to accelerate you much faster than you realize.
Thank you.
And I think I follow people, and you included, and that's also kind of helped motivated me to get back on track to be consistent, because we started that years ago and it was not right. It was a podcast. We're going back, pivoting a little bit and doing it more on the reels. And it's motivated me to like, oh yeah, we need to go back. This is what he's doing, what Yosuke's doing. That's good. We need to go back on that. And we're going to be the 2 people who are the agency owners of the face doing podcasts, getting out there. And that's going to accelerate us. And that's a great thing.
Yes.
And I also really, we learn a lot from each other.
Yeah.
So just because you're saying that about me, I'm learning from you too.
Oh,
you know,
thank you.
I'm watching you. I'm like, oh wow, he did this. You just told me about the eating food thing. I'm like, okay. Eating 4 times a meal. I'm gonna cut that to half of a burger.
Yeah.
So that's gonna help me at a time. Portion control.
Yeah.
I need to eat slower to have portion control. Sometimes I get excited with the food. I'm like, I'm so excited. This burger's gonna be delicious, and then just need to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really appreciate being on the show. I always want to be on the show. So I'm really glad that I'm actually on the show. And thank you for thinking of me and inviting me to be on the show. So, man, I look forward to continue following you and celebrating with you at Addie's.
Yes.
And yeah, I just going to cheer you on and we cheer each other on. And
Yes.
maybe one day I can have you on our show. Like, who knows what questions I'll ask, but I'm excited.
To.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So thank you again for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Well, if you don't know Vahid, I feel like everybody knows Vahid. But, I'll put the link in the description, Freestyle, and then Freestyle Creative. You go.
That's right,
Freestyle Creative. And then all the social links, I'll put it down the description. And then if you guys are watching YouTube, please hit the like and comment. And then that means world to me. And if you're watching in Spotify or iTunes, hit the 5-star review. It'll probably do the nice thing for me. So I appreciate you guys, and then see you guys next Friday. Peace.